Okay, that should be us live. Okay, so for what we are going to be doing here is we're going to be looking at some true crime stuff. And what that means is we're going to be watching an old episode of Crimewatch. In case you don't know what Crimewatch is, it was a show on BBC where they would make recreations of crimes to appeal to the British public for any information. Now, a lot of the cases were solved as a result of that, but some of them are still unsolved. So we're going to be going back. This is the first episode, which was broadcast in June 1984. Okay, and just so you are aware, it's not always going to be fun, this stream, because we are dealing with real life crime with real life victims, and some of the cases are quite horrific. So there's your trigger warning. Okay, so let's just bring this up. Okay, so then should probably have had this all ready to go beforehand, but never mind. Okay. Okay, so you should all see that. Okay, let's just play. Look at that. The old big siren.
Hello and welcome to Crimewatch UK. Now, if you've ever worried or complained about crime, this is your chance to do something about it. The police can never solve crime on their own, of course, at least not in a country that demands.
So, just a little information just on our host here, Nick Ross, just to give you his background. He's basically broadcasting royalty at this point. He started as a radio reporter over in Northern Ireland before moving to World at One. Then he became presenter on a number of different BBC shows, such as the inaugural BBC Breakfast Time and Watchdog. He's had a ton of political shows on both TV and radio, and he's written books on crime. He stayed with Crimewatch until 2007, making him one of the longest running presenters of a single show in British TV history. And he got a CBE for broadcasting in 2021.
The sort of liberties that we expect. They can act only on information received. So we're going to ask you to turn amateur detective and help out the professionals. This is about real-life crime, not the stuff of fiction. These are all real police officers. They're all waiting for your call. Everything you see in this program will be for real.
I don't believe any of them are taking calls at the moment.
Facts.
No one knows what to call in about yet.
You may find some details disturbing, but they'll only be there if it's necessary evidence that could make all the difference.
It's just some information on Sue Cook. She had been a radio DJ with Capital FM and had been a bit of a jobbing TV presenter until Crimewatch came along, when she was a regular presenter on until 1992. And she still made some sporadic appearances after that. But yeah. And she's also written a couple of crime novels, one of which is now being adapted into a film script. So good for her.
In solving a crime. And if you see anything tonight that jogs your memory, please call us. We hope to see immediate results. The number is 01 if you're outside London, 811 8055.
We
Don't
start
actually
with
call
a
it a
case
number.
that's
It's
chilling.
too short anyway.
Somewhere, probably in the English Midlands, there's a killer on the loose. And someone must know who he is. The police and a grieving family need your help. As you're about to see, the nature of the killing leads to the fear that he might well strike again. It's a
Okay.
macabre story made even more bizarre by this
Starting with
letter
a
that was
murder
sent to the
story.
police by a man who claims to be the murderer. Do you recognize the style? It may have been written with a ruler and a mapping pen, and look in particular at those peculiar S's that are written in the form of exclamation marks. It's a bit like some computer shorthand. Now, the letter could be a
Yeah.
decoy, it could be a hoax, but if you know who wrote it, you could save someone's life.
What it
In
looks
the
like is one of
reconstruction
those
that
things you
follows,
get when
every
you're a kid,
detail is as exact as we can make it.
where you
The real
just fill
locations
in the
and
little
the
bits
actual
of the
vehicle the
letters,
killer drove.
little stencil things.
The outskirts of the village of Keyworth, near Nottingham, on Halloween last year, Monday, October the 31st. At 9 o'clock in the morning, a body was found by a passerby. A young girl had been strangled and raped with particular brutality. Colette Aram, a trainee hairdresser, was 16 years old. The previous evening, she'd set out to walk to the home of her boyfriend. She never got there. This bizarre letter was received by the police 2 weeks later. The details in it suggest it's genuine and possibly written by someone with local knowledge.
Yeah, I think he's used a stencil.
Protecting this man.
Superintendent Bob Davey heads the inquiry team. Today, 7 months and 2,000 statements later, they still haven't found the killer. And without your help, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. A man who's white, aged
I don't know,
roughly
I mean,
25 to
it's
35.
obvious this has all
with
been
probably brown,
arranged for the
wavy hair.
So
cameras.
what the hell do we know about him?
These people just
He's
look
not going to
confused.
sit in his house with the word murderer written across his chest or across his back, is he? He's got some sort of sexual hang-up. He likes young kids. It's not going to be ever so obvious when you go through the door. But talk to the people. Talk to the wives. Let's find him because he's about somewhere. Colette's left in a field. Don't forget that. We're dealing with a savage killing. Let's sniff him out and let's see if we can find him.
The police have built up a
Good
picture
job.
of the killer's movements from the letter and from corroborating evidence. It starts at a riding stables 5 miles from Keyworth.
I was in a hut for hours waiting for a girl to return from horse riding.
Oh.
No one saw me.
Yet the police are almost certain that the killer hid here while girls were riding near the hut. There are forensic clues, in particular a rag stained with human semen. And at
Oh,
about
good.
4:30, something
Our
happened
first
here that was to
case,
set off
and
a fateful
it's a
chain of
paedophile
events.
murderer. Well, I did warn you it wouldn't always be
When
fun.
the car came with keys, I could not help take it.
I cannot understand that. I cannot understand why anyone would leave their keys in the car. I don't know. Maybe because I'm just paranoid about always making sure I've got everything I need on me. I just can't fathom how someone could just leave their car keys in.
The next time the stolen red Fiesta was definitely sighted was shortly after 5 on an estate in Keyworth. The witness, a local resident, noted that the car was probably parked there for about an hour,
Look at those
and they were able
80s
to give a
boxcar
description of the
designs.
driver. Did he visit a friend? Or if he actually lives locally, did he simply go home for tea? Then, early on that Sunday evening, in the hour between 6:20 and 7:20, the suspect is known to have cruised the neighborhood, trying to pick up young girls. One of them had a very close encounter.
So just so people know, a lot of these reconstructions, they they
She's
use the
excising the
actual
dog at the
people
time. He stops
who are
and he
involved
makes some
in
pretense of
the
asking
real
the way to
locations.
Wall's Drive. Now, that was clearly a bit of a ruse on his part, because
So,
Wall's Drive, in actual fact, was only 50 yards away.
so
and
that girl
probably
who was
just
walking
passed
the
it.
dog, there's a possibility she was the actual girl that the murderer tried to pick up.
Yeah, look, come
Not
here.
always, but
Can you tell me where Wold's Drive is,
but
please?
sometimes.
Just come out of it.
Oh yeah. Well, where are you going anyway?
Nowhere.
Do you want a lift?
No.
Oh, come on, it's warm in here. It's dry. I'll take wherever you want to go.
No thanks.
What are you scared of? I'm not going to bite you. Come on. Come on, where do you want to go? I'll take you.
Oh, he seems such a charmer as well.
This cruising is the kind of habit that he may well be repeating in other parts of the country. Has anyone tried to pick you up in this way?
No one knows what I look like. That is why you have not got me.
In fact, they do have various descriptions. He was seen yet again at about 8 o'clock by another important and a particularly observant witness.
Yeah, a bit weird this. It just seems a bit random, this stop.
Yeah. I'm just going to see some mates around there. Won't be long.
When he left the car there, he walked around the corner and then he came back and he made some comment about somebody not being in, as if it was a reference to having visited some house. Well, he couldn't have done that, because in actual fact there was no houses in that vicinity.
Silly
The
move.
witness's suspicions were already
mean,
aroused when he noticed what
Surely
was being
police must have
carried.
searched that area to see if there was anything he dumped off there.
Oh, yeah.
No one knows what the knife was used for, but the witness prudently took a note of the car's registration number.
Not getting one over on him.
Colette Aram took her last walk up this hill. She left home at 8 o'clock on her way to see her boyfriend just 20 minutes away. What happened then must be speculation. But one further witness, a local resident, did provide a vital piece of information.
Check him out. Huh. Just the girl screaming. Nothing to be concerned about. The cheek of this, it's disturbing his paper reading time.
I know I strangled her. When a car passed, she would have got me caught. But she was not dead when I left her. Maybe the
That's all
cold
right, then.
killed her. Cars passed when we were there. I thought she would be all right.
We're talking about Colette probably being abducted and murdered at about 8:15 on that Sunday night. At 9 o'clock that night,
So
there's a man of the description of the man.
So, like I said,
goes into the Generous Britain pub.
some of the crimes are going to be quite horrific, so it's not always going to be fun to watch.
A pint of orange lemonade, please. And can I have one of those crabs as well?
If we accept it's the man that went in the pub, and I think we do, is a man that, if you remember, he drank a pint of orange and lemon. Now that's an unusual drink. It is in our circles. We're pints of bitter men.
Hammy said.
Yeah,
Ham.
Yes,
They
please.
like- they're bitter men. But I guess it helps because you would remember someone who drank orange and lemon, I guess.
holiday, are you?
No, actually, I
I
took
don't know.
the
Do
wrong turn
many
into the
people
motorway.
go on holiday to Keyworth?
No, actually, I've come up to visit a friend who lives in Barton.
91p, please.
His stories prove to be false,
91p.
but they do suggest a degree of local
Man,
knowledge.
inflation.
He works in the power station, but he's had a bit of an accident, so I was going to visit him in hospital. Thanks.
That's a bit suspicious, isn't it? Blood on the hand.
Oh, they've gone. Excuse me.
Where's the toilet?
Oh, just back there.
We searched and we
So,
checked in the toilets.
that
And we
was
took
actually a
possession
key
of some of the
moment, but
tissues.
we'll
One of the
come back to that
tissues was sent, in
in
fact,
a
all of them
bit.
were sent off to the forensic, and they found signs of blood and also human semen.
So he masturbated in the pub toilet.
I go soon, and then you will never get me.
Well, the man who's determined to get him, who's in charge of the case, is Detective Superintendent Bob Davey. First of all, Superintendent, how much credence do you put in this weird letter?
Well, one's got to be open-minded about letters like this from previous experiences we've had. But there are certain aspects of this letter which make us think that it probably is genuine. That is from the man who murdered Colette.
Now, what about the description of the killer? Obviously, the man we used was an actor, and people mustn't think too much about that description. How much do we know about the killer?
Yes.
Well, I shouldn't want that
Remember,
to mislead
people,
people,
it
but
wasn't the
we're looking
actor
for
who
someone
committed it.
25 to 35 years, of average height, probably light brown hair, and we know from a number of witnesses that he was wearing this brown suede or
So I'll
imitation suede three-quarter length coat.
Was he clean shaven, or did he have a bit? Well, of course, he could grow a beard or cut one off since. Do we know?
Well, that's right. And in fact, a number of witnesses in this case have given varying descriptions. But we want to be open-minded about this, and we feel that at this stage he's probably clean shaven.
And do you think that somebody out there knows? Or
I don't
might
know how
know
you
who
would
the killer is? Might have a good suspicion.
Well,
how you would
we
know
think
if
so.
they're
We
clean
think that the
shaven
man's got
at
local
this
knowledge.
moment.
We think he probably lived locally at that time, and we're looking for someone.
And if
who's
you
away
were
from his
clean
home,
shaven, if you heard
between
that, surely you'd
4:30
start
that day
growing
when
a
the car
beard.
was stolen, and until about 10 o'clock that night, when we know the car was brought back or was seen coming back into Keyworth.
Now, this horrible behaviour that we saw, the cruising around, trying to pick up young girls, he might presumably be doing that somewhere else.
Well, this is a possibility. In fact, this is quite a likely possibility, bearing in mind his behaviour on this night. I mean, we've
It's a
evidence
definite.
from witnesses that, in fact, he was following young girls and cruising the area. I would think that that behaviour is probably still continuing.
So if this happens to any other young girls, you want them to report it, wherever it is they live?
Oh, yes. If anyone's
Yes.
been approached in this way or seen anyone behaving in this manner, if they let us know, we'd be grateful.
Is there anything else that we should know? Have you had any
Yes.
other information?
Always report behaviour like that.
Well, we've had a lot of information on the case, but there's a woman that rang in. She rang the local evening newspaper, and she rang one of our police stations. She was distressed. She was anonymous. She said that she knew who had murdered Colette, and then she broke down and she put the phone down on both occasions.
She knew who the murderer was.
Unfortunately, you
and she
can't
hasn't rung
always
back.
rely
Well,
on
this is what she
calls like
said.
that.
It may be, of course, that
Because you
she
get a lot of
doesn't know,
calls
but she
from
thinks she knows. We'd like that woman to come forward
calls in
and
from
contact us
mentally
again.
unstable
We'll treat
people.
whatever she says in confidence.
Right. So you want her to ring in at anybody who thinks that
So
they have
unfortunately, you
suspicions
can't
about
always
somebody
rely
who
on
might have been in the area
calls
at
like
the
that
time.
being
And
genuine.
the description is a fairly broad one.
Yes, it
Somebody
is.
between their mid-20s and their mid-30s.
That's right. That's right. And I certainly wouldn't want people to take too much notice of the actor or the descriptions that we've shown.
Right, Superintendent, thank you very much
Yes.
indeed.
Do not
The
accuse
number
the actor.
to ring is 01 811
Okay.
8055.
So
If you
before
think
we
you can
move
help
on
in
to
any way, and especially
the
if
next
you think you know who
segment.
did it, please call now. Don't let
So
what happened.
the case of Colette Aram, I can confirm that this case is actually solved. Now, it took a long time, not until 2010 for Colette's killer to be caught. She was murdered by a gentleman called Paul Hutchinson, who lived just a few streets away from her. And what's kind of interesting, the way he got caught. So if you remember in the film, he went off to into the toilet, and the police said they had collected blood samples, and they found his semen on a towel in the toilet. But what actually happened with Paul was actually his son got pulled over for an offence, and they ran a DNA sample for him, and what they actually found was it matched with Paul Hutchinson, and yeah, so that's how they found the DNA evidence. And so yeah, if he hadn't gone into the toilet on when he went to the pub that night, he would have got away with it. But like I say, it wasn't until 2010 that he was eventually sentenced for her killing, and yeah, he was jailed for life. Okay, so unfortunately, we can't say Crimewatch helped solve this case, but yeah, at least it did get solved in the end. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Sorry, I lost my cursor for a moment.
Colette happen to someone else. You can talk openly or in absolute confidence, if you want, to the officers on the case. If you prefer, you can talk to a researcher from the programme, 01811 8055. Or you can, if you want, call any time to the incident room at Bingham in Nottinghamshire.
Again, I
0949
don't believe those people are always
38282.
taking
Bingham
calls.
38282.
Well, now, if you live in a city, the chances are reasonably high that you've been burgled at some time. Well, maybe now you'll recognise some of your possessions. Every force in the United Kingdom has a treasure trove, a sort of Aladdin's
Yes, the
cave, of what
Aladdin's
they think
cave.
is stolen property, but they just can't trace the owners. Well, Crimewatch, with the help of John Bly from the Antiques Roadshow, will now try to put that right. We're starting this month with Devon and Cornwall's collection, but the goods might come from anywhere in the UK, so see if there's anything you once owned in their Aladdin's cave.
Thank you, Sue. Well, the Devon and Cornwall's Aladdin's Cave has the most
If you don't know
extraordinary
what the
range of things,
Antiques
from the
Roadshow
household
is,
item to the rare
basically
collector's
it's a
piece.
show in the
You know,
UK
curiously,
where
rare doesn't
people bring on
automatically mean valuable.
their
For example,
possessions
this
for
little
him to
presentation
value.
mace. It's
And he
inscribed
said,
Cornhill Ward,
well,
Right
this
Honourable
piece of
Nicholas
tack
Fowler,
could be
Lord Mayor,
worth as much as
1884,
four,
which makes
maybe
it unique,
even
but of
£5.
no great commercial value to anyone
And
outside
they'll say,
the
oh
family of Robert Fowler,
gosh,
to whom it could be
I
priceless.
didn't know it was so
So,
valuable.
all Fowlers, please take a close look. Now, in contrast, the tea caddy. Now, these little boxes were made to take a specific amount of tea originally. It was called a catty, but of course we were lazy with our language as we are now, and it became corrupted to caddy. And they're now extremely collectible. Nice little boxes like this one particularly, made about 1790, covered in nice sort of
But you've
foliate
just got to
marquetry
know
with cross banding. A very nice little box.
there were
They were made
chances
in
who would
large
call
numbers.
in for
And
this.
to illustrate what I've
to
just
say,
said, they vary slightly.
that
Here's one with a
that's
little
mine,
silver top.
definitely
to
mine.
identify, a little silver handle.
Owned it for years.
Do you know, a rather tenuous link now into continuing with silver, we go to what looks
Because, you
like
know,
every granny's wedding
there's
present,
gotta
and I'm
be
quite
people
sure every
who would
grandma's
try
got one
it.
of these. A nice little silver
Why wouldn't you?
teaspoon set with
They don't
sugar
know
nips
who it belongs
encased,
to.
sometimes in red, sometimes in royal
That's the
blue.
whole point.
Although they were made in their millions, each one of these is identifiable by the fact on the back of each spoon there will be a set of hallmarks, and we can tell from those hallmarks a great deal of information. For example, the crown that you can see there is the Sheffield Assay Office, and the R is the date letter for the year 1884. So we can tell where and when they were made. So it's obviously a very good idea to keep a record of what you've actually got in your home. And you know, the easiest way of doing that is to stand in the middle of your room
Very nice.
with a camera and just click all the way around. And then you have a complete contents of your house in camera. Much more unusual and possibly easier to identify are these gaming counters, which come from the 17th century. They're silver coins. You know, in the 17th century, 200 years ago, gaming was extremely popular. And the wealthy people used
Make
to carry
for a
their own
good
counters.
game of backgammon.
These are identifiable because one of these rare little sets are actually French half AQ coins dated 1643 and 1644. And now to a piece of furniture. And here we have a most superb little example of a little walnut ladies' writing table and needlework table. It's got a little bag underneath that slides
Doesn't
out.
look very
The silks and the
practical
wools
for
in there,
writing
her
on, to be
writing
honest.
compartment there, and here,
It looks a
best
bit,
of all,
looks a
a
bit
compartment
small.
where a lady or a young girl could keep her
I don't know, maybe
secrets,
extend
those
out.
little indiscretions of the Victorian period. A very good, extremely fine piece of Victorian furniture. And before I sit down again, I'm supposed to tell you that they believe, in fact, my chair has also been stolen. So before anybody pinches it again, I'm going to sit down and say that if you've recognized
John's
anything
laying
you've
claim
seen
to that
tonight
one.
here, please ring us here on Crimewatch UK.
The number to ring is 01811 8055. Now, we've already had a large number of calls. One of them, at least, is an important one, we think. We'll let you know what develops as the show goes on. Now to a number of crimes where your help is needed and where we've invited police officers to appeal to you directly for information. Here at the Crimewatch UK Incident Desk are David Hatcher and Helen Phelps.
Hello.
Right.
We start with a fresh appeal for your help in tracking down the killer of a young nursing student, Isla Carolina.
So before he gets
holiday
into
from
that, I do have some, if I could just go back. Yeah, so I do have some info on David Hatcher here. So he stayed on Crimewatch until 1999. He served in the Kent Police from 1968 to 1999 before moving to the British Transport Police and retiring in 2004. And he is the president of the Rotary Club of Medway. Now, I have to admit, I didn't actually know what a Rotary Club is. So I did have to look up to see what they do. And it says they bring business and professional leaders together to provide humanitarian services and promote peace and goodwill throughout the world. So yeah, that's quite nice. I don't know. I suspect it's very hard to actually get involved in these things. From what I can see, it's a bit of an elitist club. You know, a bit Freemason-esque.
When she checked out of the YWCA in London and headed off west, probably hitchhiking. Her body was discovered on the Blenheim estate in Oxfordshire, but her rucksack was found 5 miles away, right beside the A40 at Bernard Gate. Did you travel from Oxford to Whitney on that Sunday, August the 7th?
I don't know,
Or
does
see
anyone
Isla
still
walking
do
along, or maybe waiting for a
hitchhiking
lift?
these days?
Note the gold
I mean-
shoes and the blue socks and the white
I
trousers.
guess it's always been a bit
And
risky,
that
but it would have been
Finnish
even
flag
more
on
risky
her blue
then.
rucksack, which when found was light of about £100 in Finnish currency. Now, markers are fairly unusual. Were you offered any, or did you see anyone trying to exchange some? A recent clue is this anonymous letter,
I can't imagine there'd be
posted
too
from
many
Oxford in January this year. The writer
too many
mentions
examples
finding a
of
small purse and a
Finnish
thin
money being
waterproof jacket
exchanged at that
near
time.
where Isla's rucksack was found. Did someone you know come back from an afternoon walk with a new anorak? If you can help with the letter, the markers, the rucksack, or if you recognise Isla, please call us.
And maybe you can help us solve one of the most hard.
All right, so I'm just going to go back on. So Isla Carla, I won't even try and pronounce it. Karjalainen? I have no idea. So her case is still unsolved. Yeah, she was just hitchhiking. You know, they found her rucksack, but yeah, it's still unsolved. And even if you go looking into the true crime community, even they don't really have any strong theories on what happened to her. There's a suggestion it could have been serial killer Christopher Hallowell, but that seems unlikely because he would have only been 18 at that time, and you know, none of his crimes are known to have happened prior to the year 2000. So So yeah, so that's still one that's out there to be investigated. Okay, so just go back.
The crimes of the month. This looks like any ordinary transit caravan, but it's probably unique. It's equipped with all the modifications you need for someone in a wheelchair, so that
Well, there wouldn't
disabled
be
people
many
can
like
share
that, I
holidays with
imagine.
their families. 8 weeks ago, a young man turned up at the owners in North London, desperate to hire the van to rescue, he said, disabled friends stranded.
So Helen here. So it's been a little harder to try and find any information on here. So I don't know exactly how long she stayed in the police force for, but she was on Crimewatch until 1990.
In Cumbria.
And
He drove off on March the 20th.
sorry, but what I do know is she, if I can find the page, yeah, she set up her own television production, research, and office management company. So basically, they handle research for TV shows. I guess crime being a particular specialty for them.
And the caravan hasn't been seen since. His checkbook and licence turned out to be stolen. The bus has the number plate HWV 361V, or at least it had. It might have been changed now. We need to hear from anyone who has seen or serviced this van. Please keep a lookout.
Now,
so I haven't really looked into this one to see if that has been solved, but I don't imagine it's going to be very hard to find out if a caravan had been found after being stolen. So it could come up on a future episode that the caravan has been found, but yeah, we'll have to wait and see on that one.
are you about to be robbed yourself? Do you remember that audacious Holborn safe deposit job when Lloyd's Bank was broken into over a weekend, when the gang made off with millions of pounds? Well,
Oh yeah,
the City of London police have caught some of the gang, and that, you might think, would be the end of
that was
that.
the Great Bank
Except for
Robbery in
these photos
1971.
which officers came across during the inquiry. These safes and strong rooms are almost certainly targets which are all sussed out and ready to crack. Is yours the next on the hit list? This is the sort
You
of
know what?
thing
These
you'd find in
safes,
any
they last a
retailers
long
dealing
time.
with small but valuable goods. Have you worked anywhere
So
where the filing baskets were on
yeah,
top
some
of
of
the
those
chub
safes
out
could
the
still
back?
be in place.
Is that where you plugged in the kettle?
I don't know
This
if
one's
this
also a
ever
chub, a bit more sophisticated.
ever
Do you
led to any
recognise the
further
panelling?
charges. I'm afraid
Wherever you are,
I
have a
haven't been
think
able to
about the safe where
find
you
any
work.
information
And if
on
you
that.
recognise any of these safes, please let us know.
And finally, Thames Valley Police have been appealing for a week for help to trace Mark Tildesley. Last Friday, he cycled to his local fair in Wokingham and was last seen there at 7 o'clock in the evening. He was wearing a cream zip-up jacket with a lion on the back. His gold-coloured chopper bike was found tied to the railings where he would have met his parents. Did you see him? Was he with anyone? And still on the subject of missing children, Lothian and
Okay,
Border...
so Mark Tildesley. Let me just. So his killer, yeah, his killer has been found. He was killed by Leslie Bailey, who was part of a paedophile ring led by a man called Sidney Cook. Okay, and he was arrested for the murder in 1991. How he got caught was he was already in prison, along with Sidney Cook for the murder of the boy Jason Swift, and he had sent a letter to Cook that got intercepted by the prison guards, in which he confessed to the murder of Mark Tildesley. Now, only Bailey was convicted for the murder of Tildesley because the CPS didn't feel they had enough evidence against the other men involved. But what seems to have happened is they had kidnapped him, they drugged Tildesley, and I'm sorry, this is quite graphic. They sexually abused him before they discovered he was dead. So yeah, but only Leslie Bailey was convicted for the murder. Yeah, yeah, very horrific stuff. I'm afraid. Okay, but there is still one loose end in this case, because although Bailey has been convicted for the murder, Mark Tildesley's body has never been found. Okay, let's just go back.
The police investigating the murder of 5-year-old Caroline Hogg have been very concerned about the number of suspicious incidents which go unreported. We didn't think it was important enough, is what people usually say when pressed. Please don't think that. The message for parents everywhere is make sure your children
I
know
did
how
used
to
to
say
have a badge
no
like that
to
when I was a kid.
strangers.
If you
So they didn't really go into much detail on Caroline Hogg there, but I can tell you her murder has been solved, and she was killed by serial killer Robert Black, who I've got a feeling we're gonna come across him again in future episodes. He was convicted in 1990 for the murder of 4 young girls, but it's believed he could have killed a lot more.
can help with any of the items we've mentioned, please call us here at Crimewatch UK.
And the number to ring is 01811 8055. We'll be waiting for your call. Now, of course, there are some parts of the detective process in which we, the public, can be of very little help. For example, it takes a forensic scientist to discover microscopic clues, and only specialists can match fingerprints. But even then, it almost always depends on us to volunteer the crucial information that will clinch the case.
This fingerprint is a case in point.
Here we go.
It could belong to a murderer, but the police need your help if they're
They're going to
to
get
prove
all
it.
CSI.
Mrs. Juliet Rowe, a mother of 2, was killed in Budley Salterton on Monday the 21st of September 1981.
I will
It
come
happened
back
at her
to
home,
her.
a detached house in Castle Lane called Milford. The murder was particularly clinical. She'd been shot 6 times in the back, head and chest with a .22 automatic pistol. There were no signs of a break-in and nothing was taken. Police are still hoping that motorists on holiday in Devon at the time, driving from the coast and passing Mrs. Rowe's house, may recall seeing something odd.
I
An
do
orangey
have
red Aston
information for
Maxi
this
car, for
case,
example, which
but
was seen flashing
like I
its
say,
lights
I'll
and
come
speeding
back to it
away
when
from the scene of
they've
the murder along the
finished
nearby
their
Woodbury
little
Road.
bit on here.
So as far as the public's concerned, it's this red car that could trace the killer. But for the police, this fingerprint is a vital clue. Detective Chief Inspector Pearce, how are you hoping this print might help you with the crime?
Well, during our examination of the property, we found some 400 fingerprints and eventually traced 260 people that had access over a period of time. The fingerprint has been searched nationally by all police forces. It hasn't been eliminated, so it could well be the offenders. And we also have it on our own computer system, and it's searched against all newly convicted people. And to demonstrate the system, your fingerprints have been obtained, as you know. We've coded them and put them on our computer with many thousands of other people. And also Sergeant Froggatt has
So
examined
Sue
your
Cook
desk for
is now on
fingerprints,
the
and we
National
believe we've
Criminal
got a right
Database.
thumb. So what he is going to do now, he is going to code that fingerprint and ask the computer to search it, female, everyone over the age of 30 years.
Well, the extraordinary thing is that the numbers or mathematical values he's typed into this piece of 20th century technology have been worked out using a method developed in Victorian times, when modern-day fingerprinting was first discovered.
Here we
Back in the
go,
days
the
of the
history
Raj,
bit.
the British were finding it difficult to keep track of their many
I don't
Indian
really
subjects.
remember
They all
Crimewatch doing
seemed to
this.
look the same.
Maybe this
Indian
is just an
prisoners were taking
occasional
full advantage
feature
of
on
the
the show.
situation by swapping places with their friends
Yeah,
at
I don't
visiting
really
times
remember them
and
doing
serving
the
their sentences
educational
on a sort of
stuff.
rota basis, until the value of fingerprints was spotted, that each individual's prints were unique. Edward Henry, a Calcutta policeman, then brought the idea back to Britain and Scotland Yard. Now, dusting techniques using fine particles of aluminium which stick to secretions left by the fingertips are commonplace methods of turning up evidence. Bulky objects like this
Nice.
wine bottle would once have had to be taken away from the scene of the crime to clutter up the forensic lab at the police station. Now they can be left where they are.
No way a copper's leaving a wine bottle behind.
The powdered prints are simply lifted off with sticky tape. Then all that needs to be taken back to headquarters is the piece of tape transferred to a card. It takes 5 years training to qualify as a fingerprint expert. The system today is still based on Edward Henry's original method. A mathematical value is given to the loops and whirls of each print, and a total score arrived at. It's a painstaking methodical process which involves a keen eye and keen eyesight. The next
From my
step, the search through
understanding,
the thousands of records of known
techniques
criminals,
haven't
can
really
then be
evolved
narrowed down to those
much more
nearest the
since
score
then.
of the suspect's print. But with millions of prints on files throughout the country, what is the
Could be wrong on
chance of
that.
there being two different
Happy to be
individuals with
corrected.
similar prints? Gerald Lambourne, a former commander at Scotland Yard, has made fingerprints his life's work.
I think I better answer that in the same way as I answered
He
Dave in
literally
court,
wrote
asking
a
the same
book
question.
on fingerprints.
He said, I know you can produce some
No, he did.
mathematical
It's on
formula
Amazon.
which proves the possibility of two people having the same fingerprint. He said, but the members of the jury are not mathematicians. Can you tell them in layman's English what the chances are? So I told them that one person stood more chances of forecasting 8 correct draws every week through one football season.
Did you know a
Each fingerprint
koala's
can have up
prints
to
are almost
130
identical
separate
to a human's?
characteristics. And under British law, a minimum of 16 must be found to tally before a matching pair is established. This level of proof is one of the highest in the world, and even then it has to be verified by 3 other experts before it can be used as evidence in court.
Yeah, we don't
The system has
half-ass it like
convicted thousands of
the
criminals,
Americans.
though none perhaps quite as celebrated as the great train robbers. The Royal Mail train was bound for London, but never made it. It was hijacked and relieved of £2.5 million in ready notes. A huge police hunt traced the gang's hideout to a deserted farm. The robbers had gone, but the trail was still fresh, and Gerald Lambourne was there.
Well, from a fingerprint point of view, it was like in Latin's cave. Fingerprints all over the place.
Unfortunately,
Although
the
there's
robbers were in
obviously
Brazil.
an attempt by the robbers to wash away their prints, because we found traces of the washing and also the large sponges which were probably used.
So who was the first of the robbers you identified?
A very famous gentleman called Biggs. He was on the game of Monopoly.
Ronnie Biggs.
8 more of the gang joined Biggs in jail as a result of leaving their fingerprints in incriminating places. That was 20 years ago, but the basic technique has remained the same. Supplemented now, though, by advanced technology like lasers being used experimentally in this country, where prints are particularly tricky to detect. The beam causes proteins left behind in the sweat to fluoresce. But one of the most surprising recent developments is also one of the simplest. It shows up prints on difficult surfaces like metal, another application for superglue.
What we're going to do is now leave that in there. We've got our 2 pads now, impregnated with an alkaline solution. We put them inside. We're going to take our superglue. And what we're going to do is now put the
Yeah, I bet
superglue
he's
on
done
the
a
pads and allow
he's
them
done a
to
lot of
start
tests
fuming. It's the
with
fumes
glue.
that will, as we've said, go all over the place. Any print that you leave behind, particularly on a fresh print, there's about 98% that's moisture or water. And what superglue fumes, in fact, do is stick to any of the moisture. So any marks that have been there, particularly on a fresh mark, that have been left by whoever it was that handled that particular weapon. Right, so some time now has elapsed, and let's have a
She
look
doesn't
and
look
see
like
if
she's
it's,
really getting it.
Our knife. Well, there we are. There's our prints on our knife.
It's pretty cool, though.
Well, the next step in the technological chain is inevitably the computer, like this one here, and its display system, which is to be installed, in fact, at Devon and Cornwall this week. Well, it's now printed out a short list of 10 sets of fingerprints that it says are close matches to mine. Is that right?
That's right. Well, what Sergeant Froggatt is going to do now, he's going
Just
to look
look
at
at that
the
computer
responses
processing
from
power.
the computer on the digit scan system here and compare them with the right thumb found on your desk.
It's got to be at least a 128K spectrum they're using.
Ah, now that looks like yours, Sue.
So that's mine.
I'm sure it is, yes. There we go.
Meantime, however,
Case
this
solved.
fingerprint
Sue
hasn't
Cook did
so
it.
far found a match, and Mrs. Rowe's murderer is still at large. It's a long shot, but if you think you can help, perhaps you saw this car, or perhaps you have inside
I mean, that
knowledge.
is quite a
You can
distinctive
call
car,
us in
to be honest,
confidence
isn't
here
it?
on Crimewatch UK on 01
How many orange
811
cars do you get?
8055.
I don't know, maybe
Or
they were
Exeter
common in the
CID
80s.
on Exeter 52191. That's 0392, the code for Exeter, 52191.
Okay, so Juliet Rowe. So her killer was caught. It was a guy called Keith John Rose. So he was arrested in 1990, and he was actually arrested for another offence of attempting to kidnap a business owner called Victor Cracknell. But in the process, they were also able to link him to the murder of Juliet Rowe. And yeah, he was served to life imprisonment, a minimum term of 25 years. But it was a very brutal killing. He was attempting to kidnap her and hold her for ransom. She tried to escape, and he shot her 4 times in the back, and then 1 bullet to the head and 1 to the heart, which is just overkill at that point. But one thing I did find is back in 2017, Keith Rose he appealed his prisoner status with the Secretary of State because he wanted to be downgraded to a Category B prisoner. Now, the significance of whether you're Category A or Category B is basically if you're Category A, you basically have no chance of making parole. That's because Category A, that's high security. You're a danger to society. And of course, Keith, he had a previous when he had actually attempted to escape from Parkhurst back in the 90s, which obviously worked against him. But yeah, he appealed it, so he got downgraded to a Category B, which is means he was moved to a less secure prison, and he has more chance of making parole. And he wrote into the Ministry of Justice Journal to tell of his experience. And as far as I'm aware, he is still in prison at this time, but there's a possibility he could be released on parole in the near future. Okay. Right, back to the show.
Now to Britain's and possibly the world's biggest ever stamp theft, and there's a £24,000 reward for the person who solves this one. It happened about 2 months ago, in fact on Monday, March the 26th, in the City of London. Thousands of stamps were stolen, including irreplaceable items of postal history and some complete collector's albums.
The stamps had been
Wow.
valued and catalogued by Stanley Gibbons, ready to be flown to South Africa for auction. They were on public display for 2 days. Then the consignment was picked up by the same freight company which Stanley Gibbons has used for the past 12 years to transport stamps to the airport. It was a Monday, March the 26th, and this particular
I've never
delivery was
known
worth rather
anyone
more
who
than
actually
usual,
collects stamps,
approximately £250,000.
but I'm sure they must be out there. If you know someone
The
who
stamps were
collects
locked in
stamps,
3 green plastic
call in
canisters
to
and 2
the number
suitcases
on the
like
screen.
these.
We must find these people. Do not actually call in.
It was about 1:20 p.m. when the driver left Stanley Gibbons and drove east down the Strand. After one other routine collection, he arrived, still with the stamps on board, at Adler Street in Whitechapel. Another regular job. By now it was about 1:40 p.m. and he went straight to the first floor office. But the goods weren't ready for collection, so he had a cup of coffee and then left about 10 minutes after arriving. And the driver is certain that at this point he did check that the back of the van was still locked. Next stop,
Still
St
locked.
Mary Axe in the City
So
of
he
London.
says.
He parked outside the Baltic Exchange, just beyond number 24, where he was due at 2 o'clock. He was a few minutes early. Were you in St Mary Axe at around 2 o'clock on Monday the 26th of March, while the van was unattended? Do you use this bank or cash point? And if so, do you recall seeing this blue van or anyone or any vehicle near it? Because by 2:05, the van had been opened and £250,000 worth of
I
stamps
think their
had gone.
mistake was getting Neil Morrissey to drive their van.
Well, Detective Chief Inspector Alan Goodman is in charge of investigations at Bishopsgate Police Station. How sure are you now that the stamps were stolen in St Mary Axe?
We're satisfied that the theft actually occurred in St Mary Axe. We're obviously keen to talk to anybody who may have seen something, particularly people who may have attacked the back of the van and perhaps got into it and taken the canisters out of the vehicle. We're also interested
Yeah,
in
you
trying
gotta
to see
think,
whether anybody may have
if the
noticed another
van was
vehicle that may have
locked,
followed the van from
surely
Stanley Gibbons
someone
down to
would
the
have
city.
seen
Now, what about
some
those
people
canisters
trying
and
to
the stamps
break that lock.
themselves?
Yes, well, I have one in the studio with us tonight, and we haven't found
So,
any of the 3 canisters. So this
yeah,
is
I
identical to
suspect
those
they
stolen.
had already
We'd be
been
interested
stolen.
to hear from anybody who may have seen these laying about anywhere at all, and obviously any information we would treat in the strictest confidence.
And the stamps, some of them were very rare indeed, weren't they?
Yes, some of them were. We have, in fact, a tuppenny blue, there's a pair of tuppenny blues, and they are worth in the region of
Tuppenny blue.
£7,500. There are others that aren't quite as
Almost
valuable,
sounds
but
rude, doesn't
still would attract interest, particularly from dealers or collectors. And again, we'd be interested to hear from anybody who may have been offered these, particularly at a cheaper price.
Right, so stamp collectors who might have received anything from this particular catalogue recently, please let us know.
The number to ring 01811.
Okay, so I haven't actually been able to find anything on this specific case, whether these stamps were recovered. But what I have found, trying to look into this, is it turns out stamp collecting is a very cutthroat world, full of fraudsters, thefts, and forgeries. So, yeah, don't get involved in stamp collecting. It's a dangerous business. Let that be your takeaway from the evening.
8055, we'll be waiting for your call. And I can tell you now about some of the calls we've had so far. We've had one genuinely dramatic call about the Colette Aram killing. Now, we mustn't be too optimistic about these things, but the police are following an entirely new line of inquiry there. We've had some other genuinely important calls, and please don't give up if you find that the lines are engaged. We're having a huge volume of calls. If you're ringing about the Colette Aram murder, you can ring directly to Nottingham.
Don't give up.
The Bingham number is 0949 38282. 0949 38282.
Don't
Please
call that
do
number
keep
now.
trying. Well, now something you can do not so much to help the
won't
police as to help yourself. If you own a car, you assume its registration number is unique. So did the owner of this one. It isn't. One of these cars, the one on the left, is stolen property.
Forgeries.
Is yours Well, to make sure you're not in possession of stolen property, take a note of these 4 numbers: G7319704, G3774056,
See, this is why you would have needed to have recorded the show back in the day.
B3775795,
So you can write these numbers down in time.
H2174214. Now, if any of these numbers appears on your logbook, then
No
it's a forgery.
Sky Plus back then.
This
No
is the logbook, the
rewinding
vehicle
live
registration
TV.
document from one of those white Ford Escorts.
I don't know if
Stolen
I
one.
actually
We
said
showed
this,
you.
but this show did go out
And even if your
live.
document isn't one of these forgeries, it and your car could still be stolen. But there are various ways to reassure yourself. For example, if you've got a torch, you could go and check now. Look under the bonnet for the engine and the chassis numbers. Each of them will have a plate like this, or an engraving like this. They should be the same as the 4 numbers on your documents.
If you do have a stolen car, remember the Swansea computer is going to catch up with you in time.
I
So
guess you
the
could
sooner you
still
find out,
do
the
that
more
now.
chance you have of doing something
If you want
about
to
it,
go
really
out,
getting
check
your
your
money
car,
back. The Stolen Vehicle branch of the
documents.
Metropolitan Police has compiled a checklist, especially for the programme. This is it. It's free.
You never know,
To
you
send
might
us a
find out
stamped,
your
addressed
car is
envelope, but you must remember that, to
stolen.
Crimewatch UK, TV Centre, London, W12 8QT.
And a final reminder of the number 01811 8055. In fact, the lines are going to remain open from now until midnight. So if there's any way in which you might help, particularly if you know anything that could prevent a crime, any crime, please do call us. Everything is in strictest confidence unless you say otherwise.
I can tell you we have had some very important calls, at least 15 or 20 just on that pass for the disabled. We'll be back before BBC One goes off the air tonight to tell you what the response has been by then. If you'll have gone to sleep by then, well, join us again,
big one
please,
to promote
next
the
month.
calls.
If you are staying up tonight, we'll be back at about 11:45. Meanwhile, don't have nightmares. Serious crime is mercifully rather rare. We need you to help make it even more so. 01811 8055. Until midnight, we'll be waiting for your call. Good night.
There you go. That's Crimewatch. There's Nick and Sue having their fake conversation, as was the style of the time. So this here. Okay. Right, so yeah, that's it for the first episode. I've as you've seen, I have tried to look into the cases that are on the program. Now I haven't watched Weeks Ahead, so it might be the case such as in the the case of the stamps. I don't know if that was ever solved, but it might turn out in future episodes that actually it was solved. Like I say, I haven't watched Ahead, but yeah, the cases that are on here, I have looked up so to see if they were solved, if they are still open. So if you want to look into some of these cases yourself, all the information is on there. Yeah, that will be it for this episode. I will possibly come back to it. I don't know, maybe next week, maybe 2 weeks time. I'll have to see. You should next be seeing me on 8 out of 10 Cats' channel. That's Cats with a Z. When we do the weekly roundtable quiz. If you've enjoyed this video, please feel free to like and subscribe. Until next time, don't have nightmares.